Welcome to Ladies Talking Love, Season 2, Episode 4. What about vibrators? It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. In this episode, talking about vibrators and sex toys, we jump right in. And this topic is really new for me still. And growing up, I feel like I just had this view that sex toys were dirty and bad and all about masturbation. But I've been realizing that they can actually be a super great addition to your partner's sex life. And I hope that this episode will just give you some good information to think about whether you're new to toys or you already have some experience, some new toys to maybe consider or try. And even though some of it may be so new, you're like, what? I didn't even know that existed. That you can listen and learn and then just take that information to decide what you may be up for trying or just hang on to the information for a later date. April Davis is a compelling speaker, creative consultant, visual artist, and wordsmith. She has been featured in magazines, on podcasts, and on stage, sharing her wisdom, humor, and knowledge as the creator of the Vagina Blog and the Vagina Blog podcast. April's passion and drive have created an entire community around female body health as she empowers women and vagina owners to love themselves fully while focusing on bringing light to taboo topics that we just don't talk enough about, like sex and periods, along with self-love and positivity. Before jumping in, I just wanted to thank you for being here. Thanks for learning with me and exploring these topics that are often taboo to talk about. Thank you so much. If this podcast has been meaningful or helpful for you, I would really appreciate if you could go and leave a review. That helps other people find the podcast and just know what it's all about. So without further ado, let's talk love. I'm excited to welcome April Davis back onto Ladies Talking Love. Thanks for joining me, April.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are going to dive into all things vibrators today. And so to start off, let's just jump in with why might some people want to try using a vibrator?
There's so many reasons to think about using a toy. They can be so useful. I think they can come in handy. They also can be a fun way to mix things up and just try something new. They can assist. They can be such a useful tool as part of your sex life. And so why not utilize them? And seriously, they're fun. They're toys.
It's fun to try something new and you can decide, oh, this isn't for me. And I think we talked about one time, it depends on your stage of life. There might be a stage where you're like, we're good. Everything's fine. I'm able to have an orgasm or I just feel pleasurable and my partner does as well. So we're good. But there might come times where you're like, okay, what's happening?
Yeah. Or like, I'm ready to mix things up. Or even for me too, toys can cut foreplay in half, in a quarter. If you are in a position where you're like, I would like to continue having sex regularly, but we have all these children all over the place, all the time. Or, you're not able to see each other as often. There's just so many fun things that toys can provide that you miss out on if you're completely shut off to the idea.
Yeah. What are some of the things that may hold people back from trying a toy or vibrator?
I think judgment is a big one. I also think people want it to mean something about them or mean something about their relationship. If they're seeking out a toy, that sometimes is what I've heard. Like, well, I don't need those. Like there's some sort of superiority of not needing. Who cares? Like, who cares? Let's say you do need a toy. Should you just not have orgasms so that you can hold your head high and say you've never used a toy before? It's such a weird thing that we love to throw this weird judgment or shame around. And I don't get it. Toys are fun. Toys can be a great part of your own experience with yourself and your own sexuality. They can be a great addition to intercourse and your relationship with a partner. They can be a huge assistance if you're not in a position to have penetrative intercourse. They can be a really fun thing to play with. Or if you want to experiment with like different types of stimulation. I was really surprised because I did a post about butt plugs and anal stimulation. And I had so many people message me and go, wait, is anal stimulation pleasurable for you? I was like, yes. And it was just this huge surprise because so many people, I think, have this belief that anal intercourse is only pleasurable for the male body in the relationship and that there's no pleasure in it for the female. It's just something that you do for a male partner. So they were just really surprised to find out, like, no, butt plugs are way fun. Anal stimulation can totally be pleasurable for you as a female if that's something that you're into, which you wouldn't know unless you kind of experiment with it a little bit. And plugs are a great way to do that.
And I'm so glad you bring this up. Some people listening might be like, wait a minute, what the heck? We just jumped in, which is totally fine if that's not something you want to try. And that is fine.
Totally.
I love Carly Palmer Webb talks about sexual agency. Like we all have that and that's fine. But I hope that this episode will just bring up some options that maybe you haven't thought of before or some things to try. So I love that April is willing to talk to us about all the things. You might say, hey, what you just talked about, an anal toy, I'm willing to try that. And you might realize you like it, or you might be like, nope, never again.
Oh yeah.
As I've grown in my sex life, I feel like I've been more open to trying more things and that's been good. And I've realized some like, not so interested, and others like, wow,
Totally.
that changed. I didn't used to like that. And now I do. So I hope this episode will just be a good, like, okay, we can do this. We can try some new things.
We did kind of jump right into the deep end, didn't we? And we can dive deeper into that in a minute if you want to. We can rewind and go back to a little bit more basic stuff if you want.
It's all good. We're going in.
Yeah.
So what are some myths about vibrators that maybe keep people from wanting to try them out?
There's two main ones that I hear all the time. The first one is that they're worried they're going to get addicted to their vibrator. And the second is that it somehow is going to replace their partner. Both of those are myths. If you are finding that you can no longer orgasm with manual stimulation after using a vibrator quite a bit, cut back on your vibrator use. Typically, that's going to fix that problem really quickly. Because absolutely your body can grow accustomed to orgasming in a specific way. I think a lot of us will find that even like when you're in a long-term relationship with a partner, it's like, yeah, let's try these fun positions. Cool. Can we like just do the thing that we usually do that just works every single time? So that happens in relationships as well. And that's when I would be like, hey, introduce a toy, throw that in if you feel like you're in a rut that way, And so it can be the same thing with a vibrator. If you feel like you're using it a ton, cut back on using it, switch to a different type of toy. If maybe you want to still use toys, buy a new one, get a suction stimulator instead of something that vibrates, or get an internal toy instead of an external and like mix things up. Typically addiction, and I'm putting my fingers in parentheses, is a result of overuse or just your body growing accustomed to only that type of orgasm, which once again, I would argue if you were previously not having orgasms, and you are now having orgasm with a toy that vibrates, it's okay. Congratulations on having orgasms. That's kind of my thought process. But if you do feel like I've been using my toy a ton, now I can't climax with my partner, cut back.
Yeah, an experiment. I was just talking to a friend recently and it was so funny. She'd listened to a previous episode and she was like, I have never tried a vibrator. And so her husband did all this research and he got one. She just told me, she was like, I mean, I've had good sex, I've had orgasms, but they were kind of sporadic. And when we used that vibrator, it was the best orgasm I had ever had. And now they're not sporadic. And I was like, how awesome for someone who was already having a good sex life to be like, oh, there's more potential that I didn't even know was there. And I was just proud of her for like taking the leap. And it was fun to hear like, awesome, you tried. And I personally still sometimes struggle bringing in a vibrator to my sex life because sometimes I do just prefer manual. I like that, but also it's fun to try. But sometimes it's hard with that myth of replacing your partner. I feel like that's a myth that I have struggled with. It's like, how do I bring this toy in without my partner feeling like I'm replacing them? Like, who holds it? How do we work this out so we're both okay? I would love if you could just talk about that myth and maybe how some people may work through that.
I love this analogy. If a guy were to see another guy building a house with a hammer and nails, and he showed up with an electric screwdriver, the other guy would not be like, I'm not using that. I'm superior to electric screwdrivers. I'm going to hammer this until
forever.
And I'm going to build my house with a hammer and nails. I'm not using your electric screwdriver. That is way too convenient and easy. No one would be intimidated by power tools. They would just be excited about the technology and the ability to use those, right? The thing too is I think there's this myth that toys, they're only for masturbation and that they're this separate entity. So many toys on the market now are designed to be used during intercourse or adjacent to intercourse or as part of it. Even like the butt plugs that I mentioned earlier. I love using one of those during intercourse. So much fun. My husband, he actually also loves using those during intercourse. There's tons of clitoral stimulators now too that are amazing because you can be using those during intercourse, orgasm at the same time, like make that more feasible, more realistic, easier to do, or have orgasms. Like for some people, they're not getting that external clitoral stimulation during intercourse that they need in order to have an orgasm. And so a lot of times that looks like, okay, I'm going to make sure that you get off first and then we can have intercourse and then I'll get off. Toys could help facilitate all of these things taking place at the same time. They also could make foreplay easier. There's so many options when it comes to toys. But for me, I'm like, my toys are not hugging me. They are not telling me that I'm beautiful. I'm not in love with them. So the thought of it replacing my partner is ridiculous. And one thing that I will say is that I always encourage people to be very open about toy use. This is not something that you buy secretly, hide from your partner, lie about. This is when this is a problem. Yeah. If you're interested in using toys and exploring, I always encourage people, you need to be open with your partner about this. They need to know that that's something that you want to explore. Maybe they want to explore it. These are conversations that you need to have. If you're not having those conversations and you're lying to your partner, then this stuff is a problem. But that's going to be a problem. Anything that you were hiding from your partner or lying about is a problem, right?
Yeah. And deciding together what you're okay with and what you've decided, which I think is key. What if you maybe want to try a toy, but your spouse or partner is like, well, is that going to replace me? What if it's on the other end? Maybe you're open to it, but your partner's like, how can you talk with them about that?
I think it's a conversation they need to have. And I think it's really important. So let's try it. And if you feel replaced, maybe we don't.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't going to work in our relationship. Like there's some of that type of stuff where it's personal. I mean, this is so individual because for some people, they are like, I would never do any of this. All of this is so inappropriate. I'm not okay with it. They can't get past any of that. That's totally okay for them if it's okay for them and if it's okay for their partner. I would never advocate pushing people into things that they're not comfortable with. So I think if that's happening between two people in a relationship, they need to have a discussion about it. They need to see what they want to do. And if this continues to be like a curiosity that the other partner is totally against, maybe it is time to talk about counseling. Maybe it is time to figure out where is the concern coming from.
Yeah. And I think that's so good too. If they decide, okay, I'll try it. And then you could decide, oh, this isn't going to work for us. I think that's such an important point you brought up. We have to have transparency with our partner for anything to work out well and to figure out together.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a question I have because sometimes this happens to me. I mean, not very often. I haven't bought many vibrators in my day, but when I get it, sometimes I'm like, how do I use this? Where does it go? Can you give us some tips on how to figure out how to use them when they come?
I was so surprised because I get this question. People will be like, okay, I bought a toy. Now what do I do? And I'm like, what do you do? You put it on your private parts. Have fun. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I didn't think I was going to have to answer these follow-up questions. When you are doing your research, when you're deciding what kind of toy you want to buy, the first thing that I ask people is, do you like external stimulation? Do you like internal stimulation? Typically, people have an idea if they like one or the other. And then if it's like, okay, I like external. Okay, cool. Here's some brands I totally recommend. And I'll kind of go over and say like, here's what I would point them in the direction of. Like, I love these style. Go look at these. And most of the brands I recommend, I love Smile Makers. They are a great first time toy. They're really easy to use. Their basic collection is battery operated, which puts them at a lower price point because they're not rechargeable. They're waterproof. 10 speed, really straightforward. And it's nice because they are so straightforward. I feel like they're very easy to use, but they come with great instructions. And so that's what I would be looking for as you're starting to look into getting a toy is, are they going to walk me through the process? Does it have, and if you're going to buy from a good brand, that's kind of the difference. I think sometimes people hop on Amazon and just like, I'll just order whatever I find on Amazon. But you may be getting a random toy from China that has no instructions that go with it. And who knows what the quality or what it's made out of, or, things like this. This is why toys cost a little bit more, because a lot of times if they're made here, they have a pamphlet that goes with them. They are rechargeable and waterproof. The material they're made out of is of a higher grade, so you want to look for those types of things. Don't ever buy toys that are this goopy jelly type of texture. You always want to buy medical grade, whichever material it is. I like medical grade silicone is what I would recommend. I also love glass. Glass is a fun one to play with too, because it changes temperature with your body. And if you
I
like
didn't even know they had glass ones.
if you like manual stimulation, there's some really cool glass, like kind of dildo type style things on the market that are really neat.
So the next question then leading into, you talked a little bit about like, okay, figuring out, do you like external, internal stimulation? How the heck do you go about finding a first time toy? Because this is overwhelming. There's so many out there. You've never maybe tried one before, or maybe you haven't had a good experience. How do you sift through all of that and figure out one you're not going to break your bank on, but also get an idea if you might want to use a toy?
That comes back to, do they have a website? Can you peruse the website and read more about the toys? Do they have simulations or instructions about how to use them? As you're reading those, does that sound like something that you would like? One thing I do like about toy shopping, it really forces you to have a better understanding of your own anatomy, a better understanding of what type of pleasure you're into and what you're kind of looking for. So Smile Makers, like I said, I love them for first time toys. They're fantastic. Most of theirs are external clitoral stimulation. So that's going to be right where your external clitoris is, like that nub that's right up there. It's going to be stimulating that area of your body. These are great too, because those are things that you can be using during intercourse. Let's say you were doing like traditional vaginal intercourse, rear entry. You could also be using a toy up in the front, stimulating your clitoris and vibrating it while your partner's behind you. So there's different positions that you can do that also incorporate a toy. And like I said, may make things go easier or faster or more satisfying, or, depending on what the toy is. There's also more and more companies coming out with suction stimulators. Those are very fun. I have been too scared to use those during intercourse. I think my spirit would leave my body. I think it would kill me. It's like, they're so intense. But the thing that I like about the suction stimulators, if you like oral type sensation, suction stimulators feel exactly like that, but they remove this guilt of like, I'm so sorry, you've been having to do this for such a long time. It's such a cool thing to be able to hand that type of toy to your partner and just be like, here, you can totally use this on my clitoris and this will be really fun. And so it removes that, like, I'm sorry, I'm putting you out. Thank you for doing this thing for me, and makes it easier. And so there's some of that that's really cool about toys,
Yeah. And like you said too, I had another friend who was like, I don't have to worry about if I can climax with a toy. We just get to enjoy the moment being together. Yep. And then it's like, I'm not worried about like, oh, how much work are we going to have to do? Because it can help with that, which I love that idea as well.
When someone comes to me and goes like, I have a lower libido, or I have high anxiety, or I get in my head about this, or I worry about how long it's going to take, or blah, blah, blah. It makes sex really difficult. So then my first question is, what is going to make the yes easier for you? And a lot of times incorporating a toy is going to help make that yes easier, because then they know the effort that I have to put in is less. It's minimal compared to the effort I may have to put in otherwise, because we go through seasons, right? Sometimes you have all the time in the world to have a really lovely romantic evening, tons of foreplay, really satisfying sex, and like everything is just, there's time and space and energy for it. In other periods of your life, there is not time, there is not space, and there is not energy for it. Incorporating a toy is going to help that yes be a little bit easier.
I really like that, especially because at my stage of life, I'm like, there's no time for that, April, with little kids,
Yeah.
like zero, zero.
Yeah.
So that is a great thing that you can just try and see, like, oh, maybe a vibrator will help me so we can be faster, not as much energy, and still be together. Or just not have to put as much energy. It doesn't even have to be faster.
Sunday, like I was like, I would really love to have sex right now, but I'm so tired and I don't feel like it. And I know that he's so tired and doesn't feel like it. Or I could just grab a toy and we could just spoon really quick. Everyone gets off. Very, very minimal effort. Like literally everyone's laying down, right? Easy peasy. And it's an easy yes for him because he's just like, oh, I just get to lay here and okay, cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. And for me, same. Like, so I think they can be a really great addition to your sex life.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. And I know on your page at the Vagina blog on Instagram, you often will show toys that you get. People will send you toys and you'll kind of talk about them and show them. And then you usually let us know as well what you thought about them.
Yes.
That's a great resource as well. If you are wanting to make a first time purchase, April is a great resource to look at and see what you think you might like. As we close up, could you just share a couple tips then for people who are like, okay, maybe I can dive in. I can maybe dive in and try one. Give us your top tips, what they should do after listening.
So if you're like, okay, I'm ready, let's do this. Like I said, start looking at different brands and styles. Ask your friends. Ask your friends, hop on my page and scroll through and see. There's other people doing what I do as well that talk about different toys and why they like them and why they don't, what they're good for. Determine what you yourself like. What kind of stimulation do you enjoy? What is it that you're trying to get out of this toy? Do you want it to be something that you can use during sex? A hot octopus makes this really cool toy that actually sits on top of the clitoris and vibrates, but it has a tubular sleeve on top of that for penetration by like a male partner. And what's really cool about that is if you're not in a position to have intercourse, like you can't have penetration, but you still want to have some of that sensation or your partner wants that type of sensation. Like there are toys that can meet a lot of these needs depending on what you need from it. So don't be afraid to look and to see what's out there and to ask people that you know and love, like, do you use toys? What kind of toys do you like? I love diving into this conversation with my friends because really a lot of people are using them. And also don't be afraid to, like, if you're just like, I want to try this and I only have the guts to just even think about this right now, run on down to Walmart or Walgreens or Target. Typically in the condom section, they now have little cock rings or other like really minimal baseline toys. Those are a great place to get started. They don't typically last very long. The quality is not great on them, but it's an introduction to the idea. You're not going to spend a lot of money. And if you're like, okay, I'm like ready to do this right now, I have very little patience. When I've decided I want to like try one of these things and I like want to go get it right now. So if that's what you're looking for, like run down and grab one of those and try it out and see if you like it. And then invest in a really nice toy that's going to last forever, to be rechargeable and, that's high grade. If you like internal stimulation, I love the Ioba line. They just came out with an external stimulator too that's really cool. Like I said, for starters, toys, love Smile Makers. I think they're fantastic. Their new suction one's really fun. The Womanizer is a similar model that suction stimulation is really cool. If you're looking for butt plugs or wanting to kind of dive into anal play, anything you put in the anus, you want it to have a phalanged base, which means it flares out of the base. Be very careful about what you put in your bum. Make sure it is a toy that is specifically for that. Make sure also, like, you should not share toys between your vagina and your anus. Anal toys are anal toys. Vagina toys are vagina toys. Those are two different things. And also, in terms of sanitizing, make sure you always wash your toys. Vibe is a really great brand. The plugs are really cool because they have metal balls in them. So it gives this sensation of a heaviness to them without them being overly heavy. And I like that they don't stretch out the sphincter as much. They have a very, very small, they have a flanged base, very small tube where the sphincter is. And then the plug itself is a little bit larger depending on what size you want. So those have been really fun. I'm trying to think of other brands I really like. There's a bunch of them out there that are coming out with really cool ones. Bird, it's with 2 eyes, is another really great one that's a vibrator and a suction. So if you're wanting to play with both of those, That's another good one. There's some really great toys on the market. And like I said, hop on their website, look up why they do what they do. WeVibe is another one that's cool if you're long distance. And WeVibe's neat because you control it on an app on your phone and your partner can control it on an app on their phone. So if you're long distance, they could be controlling your toy from their phone. So that's kind of a fun way to still have something stay connected while you're apart. So WeVibe's really neat. They've come out with some neat stuff. Dame has a hands-free clitoral stimulator that you actually pop in under your like labia and it just sits right there on your clitoris and it's hands-free. So there's the Eva, I think is what it's called. So there's some really, really cool toys out there to meet a variety of wants and needs.
Wow, that is the long list. You are definitely sending that to me. I'll put them in the show notes so you can all take a look. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything you wanted to add about toys, vibrators before we close up?
It's just really neat. I feel like 10 years ago, all that was on the market was the weird jelly dildos. That was like when people said toy, that's kind of what I think everyone was picturing. And I feel like today, more and more female bodies and women have gotten involved in the design of toys. And so we're seeing less and less phallus shaped toys and more toys that are really meant for clitoral stimulation, way friendlier than they've ever been. And it's cool. It's an exciting time to shop for toys.
Yeah. Where can we find you?
So I definitely live on Instagram at the Vagina Blog. I also have a website, thevaginablog.com. I'm on like Facebook, Twitter, but you're really going to find me most active on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me today, April. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.
I hope that this episode just gave you so much more information about what exists in the sex toy industry. There's so much out there and so much that I think could be really useful for us. We just don't always know what's there. So I'm so grateful for April kind of helping us just get an idea of some things to look for. I definitely learned some new things. I had never heard of butt plugs before, and I had no idea they had glass toys either. So I'm excited this week to follow along with you guys on Instagram at ladies.talkinglove and hear your thoughts and also any of your toy recommendations, what you've liked, what's been good for you, what's been challenging. I know for me, it's sometimes challenging to try to integrate a toy just because it's new and something different, but I've gotten better at it as I've practiced. I love that it can just be fun to try new things and figure out new ways of enjoying being with our partner. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thanks so much for learning with me. And as always, thanks for talking love. Thank you to all of you who listen and join me on this journey, and to our Ladies Talking Love team who make the podcast possible. Thanks to our sound wizard, Kimberly Demers, our newsletter guru, Lauren Barton, and our miscellaneous task whiz, Jana Norman. As always, thanks for talking love.